Good morning, YouTube, and good morning, John, and good morning, viewers, and welcome everyone. How you doing, John?
Good, thanks, Greg. Good morning to everyone. Here we go. First episode again, take two.
First episode again is right. We did have an attempt at this last time, and it didn't quite go to plan. We had a few technical issues, first of which was our internet bandwidth from my home. I think I had too high definition a codec, but we've fixed all that up and tuned a few other things as well, so we're looking good so far. So John, welcome, and tell me, a lot of people are here or will be watching the replay who don't know who we are, so I'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my interest in UAVs or drones, just because we're all by drone today, goes right back to my model aeroplane background and basically then 35 years in aviation. I'm currently a casual aeromedical pilot. I work for AirMed. I have a company called Morrison Robotics. We're interested in everything that flies that's a robot. And I suppose I'll always have that love of flying RC model aeroplanes. But basically, they all came together for me under the one umbrella once we had the technology. And my interest in it over the company time, about 2 years now, is just growing and growing, and I just love it.
Okay. I remember a long time ago, I remember you taking me out to a cliff one time and saying, here's a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand, I can't remember, dollars that I'm going to throw it over the edge of the cliff. I still remember that to this day.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you tell your mates it's honestly a couple of $1,000s, but you tell your wife it's a couple of hundred.
And the truth is somewhere in between.
Yeah, that's right. The friends have been flying gliders on the slope, and I lived for a while in the Balgowlah area, and there's a place there called Dobroyd Head, one of the most beautiful sites. And we had guests there come from all over Europe to fly gliders, and I actually bought a European competition glider there that would clock just over 300 kilometres an hour. It's not bad for a glider, radio control glider. Yeah. But we used to race there, and it's still quite an active fraternity, but a lovely place to sit on the beach and just fly sailplanes all day. Never
Indeed.
get tired of that.
Indeed. And just for those who may want to know where my interest in drones came from, my wife made the unfortunate mistake of buying me a $100 toy drone to play with, and I enjoyed it that much that I said, this is good. And then I sent it up into the air for where it was never going to come back from. It got away from me into bushland. I did try and find it, but it was not to be. And the bit that I'm going to share that came after that, I bought the second one. So I bought a slightly better one that had supposedly a return function. It wasn't a GPS return, but nevertheless, I actually lost it on the maiden flight. Anyway, it is what it is. And after that, I decided, look, I'm going to get something a little bit better, and the rest is history. But so that's a background of me in terms of aviation. I've got a strong technical background. I've been involved in computers since I ran a bulletin board when I was still a child, and running that out of my parents' home with 40 phone lines coming into the home, which later turned into an internet company, which, my technical IT life has gone on from there for a lot of different things.
I think your UAV life's gone on pretty well too, because you're a licensed REPL holder.
Yeah, indeed.
Your course and actually are now on our books there. So, I mean, you seem to take hold of your hobbies like I do and grab them all and take them all the way.
I'm having a lot of fun with it. And then my next hobby came, and the next hobby was Wirecast and YouTube and what we're doing right now. I had the misfortune of watching someone who does this really, really well, a guy by the name of Ken Heron, and he does a lot of live broadcasts. He does a weekly show, and he got me hooked. Unfortunately, Ken, it's all your fault, and I'm going to send my wife over to come and talk to you at some point.
That's good.
Anyway, look, so that's a little bit about us. So what we're going to do today, we're going to have some segments, we're going to have some chat, we're going to talk interactively with any questions that you might have today, but let's get into our first segment now. Okay, so the first topic we're going to have a look at today is big jobs, small quads, and this is a topic that you came up with, John.
Yeah, I did. I suppose I had an interest in the way the technology was shrinking down, mostly from a risk assessment point of view. The lighter aircraft becoming more and more capable. As you know, the Phantom 4 Pro is under 2 kilos, so it operates in a different category. And there are certain freedoms around that. And of course, and if you come down to under 100 grams, which is a very, very light aircraft, there is no restrictions at all, no licensing and no limitations on the operation of that in Australia. And so I basically noticed that the whole industry was scaling down. Once we would take a huge octocopter out just to take a photo of a house, it seemed very professional to load up a 25 kilo airplane and drag a camera up and just get a shot. Whereas today, based on good risk management, we just don't do that. If you can take the shot and get what you need, the quality, you fly the lightest and most capable aeroplane you can because of the risk reduction. I think our regulator acknowledges that. That's why we've got these new categories now, and it looks good all around. It looks good on paper, and it makes common sense as well. You don't take a sledgehammer to fix a watch.
Yeah, indeed. So some of the big jobs that you can do with this, and I wanted to share an image of something that happened for me last year. So I was travelling overseas, going to a family property, and I took a photograph using my Phantom 4 Pro, which you can see on the screen there. But just to be clear, that's not actually a photograph. That's actually a few hundred photographs stitched together.
There it is. That's a orthomorphic map, in fact, if I remember rightly, stitched together by Pix4D.
Yep. I was waiting for you to have the fancy terminology to share with that.
But it's actually not a photograph at all. It's actually a pixel, like a generated image, a pixelated image, and derived from a point cloud. So all of that sort of technology for the people in GIS understand how it works. But basically, it means you can put a ruler on it, and depending on the accuracy of the control points used or your GPS at the time, you can measure areas, you can measure dimensions of buildings, and it's an orthomorphic image. If you took a single photo of from height, of course, the image is not correct. It's fisheye. Even without a fisheye lens, it's still effectively fisheye. But by using a couple of hundred photos stitched together, we get what we call an orthomorphic correct image.
Yeah, indeed. So that photo, just out of interest, was from the Philippines, from a family farm where we've got some people living there. Can you put the photo back up full screen for me? There we go. So that little blue house that you can see at the top over there is actually a house belonging to my wife and I, and the rest of the property, you can see there's a little blue pool there, and it's a hotel building in the Philippines. It's a lovely place to go. I'm going to put the link to the Hotel Alberto's in the description after the show. But it's a lovely area. And back to the topic of drones though, so I had a bit of fun with that and doing that footage from above, but there's a lot more that you can do, and as you said, survey data and all sorts of things like that. What can you tell me about what you know about the Phantom RTK? And where does that fit in?
RTK is an add-on. That's a new aeroplane that DJI are proposing. We haven't seen some photos of it yet. At this stage, to have RTK, which stands for real-time kinetics, in fact, gives you a much more accurate GPS signal. Surveyors use this, and the way it's done is you're actually correcting the GPS signal for ionospheric disturbance. That's a very simple way of putting it. As the GPS signals come through the ionosphere, they're bent and curved and diffracted, and so the accuracy falls down to where you might have a metre or so. When we use RTK, we're actually getting the ionospheric values at the time it's transmitted to the RTK unit. So for any given day, we're measuring those errors and applying them to the GPS signal. So real time means that it's actually happening real time. We used to do it in post. We could get an atmospheric reading and add afterwards. Now, while we're flying, we're able to get real time kinetics and transmit them to the aircraft. Basically, that gives us what we call simply centimetric accuracy. And even in flights now, we're at 50 meters per second. While we're gathering data, we're able to get our figures down to 4 centimeters. That's pretty accurate, at those sort of shutter speeds and so forth. But of course, in a still photograph, once the RTK is settled, we're getting much higher resolution. So
can I ask you a quick question? So
yeah.
you do some stuff where you've got your Phantom and you've got your little tripod thing that's sitting next to it. What's the difference between RTK, DJI RTK, and what you're doing there, and what's better and why?
Well, we're at a transition point. That is a Reach RS unit, or 2 units. And what we do to make that work is we actually set up the Reach units and we put some targets on the ground.
By the way, John, I don't know if you've got some wind in the background. We've got a lot of popping from...
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Go and fix that. Hold that thought. I'll go and fix it for you
While John goes and fixes that, just a quick little side topic. John is currently floating on water. He actually does this show, and he lives on a houseboat. So
yeah, the breeze picked up there. We're not going to sail away though, so it's good. Back to my RTK. So we use the units to survey ground points. So if you have obviously marks on the ground, sometimes we use survey points or survey paint rather to mark an X. Sometimes we use checkerboards. Anything that once you do the photogrammetry and take the photos, they're in the photos. Now, when you stitch them together, the software allows you to enter those points in accurately. And what it does is it stretches the model and adjusts the model for height and makes it much more accurate. So what we're looking at in the future is airborne RTK. It's really here now. DJI are about to present it. Some of the more expensive aircraft like the Matrice 200 have RTK in them at the moment. They're around $25,000 to get that kind of technology up and running. That's just for the basic airplane. You'd have another $5,000 worth of accessories. So
I've got to ask. So to put what you've just talked about, you've got the DJI RTK and you've got the photos on the ground, or the marker on the ground. Correct. To get the same accuracy as what you would get out of the DJI RTK, you would basically need to put one of those markers in every shot. Is that a reasonable statement?
It is a reasonable statement. You don't have to put them. What RTK, airborne RTK will do, will give the aircraft corrected GPS signal. Now that's still going to be, have its errors as the airplane flies along.
Correct. Yeah.
We will always use both. And basically what we do when we need a registered survey, we'll have a surveyor come. We'll put our checkpoints out on the ground and we'll have a surveyor measure those and sign off on them. And then when we do our photogrammetry on top of that, he's able to sign off on the drawings that we produce.
Okay, cool. Well, that's been an interesting topic. Let's move on. I want to keep us moving for a little bit. So the next topic is a beautiful video that I've seen that you've created, John. I've added some music to it, and we'll watch that in a minute. But just to share, this is a bit of a difference. So we started with using your quad to do something surveying, and then obviously some beautiful photography. So let's have a look at the video.
company to actually do a 3D model of that. So again, small quad, big job. We did a photogrammetry 3D model, and of course they're going to refurbish the building. They're going to repair a lot of the sandstone damage and so forth in that clock tower. It's the old Lands building in Sydney, of course, beautiful building. And they asked me to do a 3D model of the whole building, but we started with the clock tower. It was quite a difficult job. The 3D model came out nicely in terms of them able to quantify what they need to repair, and I made that just on the fly at the end because I thought, well, I'm up here. They would probably love to have a little piece of video of this tower so they can show it to people as an introduction to their meetings and so forth as they get to work on it. So it was, but I can tell you on the day we were operating in the middle of the CBD with all of the right permissions, everything, a month of work to get whatever roads closed you need, and the police involved and councils and so forth. Flying that sort of job in the CBD is more of a undertaking of regulatory work framework than it is the flying. I just enjoyed the flying. The aeroplane did a beautiful job.
Indeed. We'll talk a little bit more about regulatory later, but so do you do much other creative flying as well, or tell me about what you do yourself?
I suppose so. I mean, I enjoy living on the water. I have a Mavic Pro here on the boat, which I must say, we've got 12 airplanes on the hangar at the moment of all sorts. But I love the Mavic Pro. I think it's a really good little airplane, and it's just so handy. I can throw it in the dinghy if I go fishing somewhere and I want to launch it. It seems to stabilise in a boat. And it's funny, taking it out for any sort of reason like that, you're going to capture some great moments on video, and that's usually by chance. I'm an early riser, so I will get up and shoot the dawn and get some fantastic shots. But I'm just in a great spot to fly. I've got a large heliport on the boat,
which is not exactly a real heliport, but a drone heliport.
You wouldn't take a helicopter. It takes the airplanes, okay. And I think, although I don't come from a photographer's background, I listen to photographers. They actually make a lot of sense. But I've never had that eye, if you like. So I've got to confess that most of the things I capture of beauty are complete fluke.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, so it was nice watching that, and let's move on. What do we got next?
You're going to throw that in right away.
Look, we're going from one extreme to the other, and I've already shared my story about how I lost my first drone and the second one on its first flight, so I thought it only fair to put this one in. So you fly occasionally with an Inspire, or is it an Inspire Pro? It's
an Inspire Pro. It's the first version, and I've had it out not fairly rarely. So usually, when a firmware upgrade comes along or an app upgrade comes along, I've got to drag it out. And we've got a job coming up for a security company, and they're using Linear detection. They wanted to look at a couple of different aircraft. So we've got a 3D Solo and the various DJI, and they mentioned the Inspire, and they said, we'd like to see one of those. So I thought I'd better dust it off, and the dusting off really didn't go quite to plan on the day, but that's how it goes sometimes.
So we got a little bit of video. Unfortunately, you didn't have it recording at the time, but let's have a look at what we got anyway.
And there it is.
And there it is. Let's leave that shot right at the end on the screen. We can see that is your Inspire at the top there.
I parked it beautifully in the top of the tree, I must say. Well, I did, the autopilot did, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I was working on an autonomous flight, and those of you that are interested in the different generations of autopilot, of course, the DJI stuff, you had your third generation autopilots in the Phantom 3 and the Inspire 1, and they've got some particular quirks. They have single barometer, single IMU, and so forth. The Phantom 4 and the Inspire 2 have a much a a better autopilot in many ways and much better sensing arrangement with them. Now that's my excuse, that's the excuse side. So on the autonomous flight I had some drift in the barometer. It was a very hot day, and of course my very carefully laid out flight plan didn't quite work with the tree. You really assume sometimes when you fly the fourth generation autopilot, you get very confident with what it will do, and that's the lesson there, I think, when you're working with these things. Add a few more meters every time to your flight plans just to be sure, because it won't land on a dime every time.
Indeed.
Land at a tree.
Yeah. How much did you pay for it?
It's about a $7,000 aeroplane with a few batteries on it and a case.
That's 7,000 Australian?
Yeah, that's right. It's an expensive investment. You can buy the Inspire 2 these days with a camera for around $10,000. It's a little bit dearer, but the Inspire 2 is a beautiful aeroplane. I haven't flown it yet, but I've had a good look at it. We're mostly not doing that kind of work. I've got it there for broadcast work, but a lot of our airplanes, our work airplanes, are just doing photogrammetry survey and, of course, viticulture things, as fixed wings and so forth. But look, how handy was it, the cherry picker there? And the story goes, there's a kid there playing basketball, and as soon as he watches the airplane land in the tree, and I'm just standing under it, and once I'd finished with the expletive, he said to me, my dad's got a cherry picker, he lives just down the road, he can go and get that for you. And I'm standing under the tree, waiting for the airplane to fall into my lap, 3.5 kilos. And I'm just looking up, I'm just concentrating, whatever I'm thinking. And the kid says, no, seriously, I can get my dad. So I said, okay, do it. 2 minutes later, this guy turns up with that massive cherry picker attached to the back of his four-wheel drive. And I said, wow. I said, this is 14 metres up in the air. I knew, because you can see from the telemetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that. I got a 12-metre cherry picker. That's easy. So off he goes, and he launches the cherry picker up and picks it out of the tree. And fascinating. I offered him some money. I said, I'd love to help pay for you. Brought back my aeroplane.
Oh, and rightly so.
And he wouldn't take any money. He says, oh no, I do this all the time. He said, I rescue these things every day. And I thought, that's interesting. There might be a bit of business there. Anyway,
Drone rescue services.
He told me, he confided in me. He said, look, I've just bought a Phantom 4. And I said, that's great, a Phantom 4 Pro. He said, that's a great aeroplane. You'll really enjoy that. And here's me, still very thankful I've got my aeroplane back. And without even thinking about what I was saying, I said, oh, would you like some lessons? Just think about that.
Maybe he needs to give you lessons and free rental on a cherry picker in future.
I kept his number, that's for sure. Although some of the guys flying for me, Paul said, keep him on the speed dial. You're going to use him again. But it was a funny moment, and he actually declined. He said, no, I'll be all right. I mean, he's just handed my airplane back to me out of a tree. But anyway, we had a laugh, and one of those days that you'd say you'd like to forget, but actually those are sort of the mistakes that one should remember when you're doing this, and just clock it up to experience, and a lucky day where the airplane's back in one piece.
Indeed. So let's move on. That's an interesting story, and thank you for allowing me to share it.
Thank you for showing it to everybody again.
Hang on, can we watch that video? No, I'm only kidding. I'm kidding.
You want to watch it again?
No, it's okay.
Isn't it?
It's okay. Enough for today. Let's move on to the next segment. So this may be a little bit premature, and as this show matures, we want to be able to have a time where we can chat to people that are in the chat room. And I noticed there was a couple of people there. Infinite Altitude, hi from Ohio, USA.
Yeah, just saw that.
Yeah. Hello and welcome.
Well, we are actually going out there somewhere this time. Take 2 is working very, very well.
Yeah, indeed.
I follow the American chat lines and forums fairly closely, mostly because I have an interest in their regulatory changes all the time. Australia follows America in a lot of things, but it doesn't seem to be following the US in UAV regulatory arrangements. And Australia led the world in them, with their first regulations in 2002. I know we're going to talk about that later. I watch it quite closely, and whether I think a lot of people are concerned over there about what their freedoms are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting having a look. We had a chat last time on the show that wasn't about airspace, and I find that really interesting, and we'll get to that in a few moments. Is there anyone else in the chat room at the moment? I saw Infinite Altitude. I saw Angus.
Yeah.
Hi Angus, thanks for joining.
Angus is still there.
Yeah. Look, thanks everyone for joining. I'll leave a couple of moments at the end of the show today if you want to say hello as well. Anyway, let's move on. Next topic, and hopefully next time we'll have a bit more promotion of the channel so that you can get in and chat and have a discussion with us. Let's go to the next one. So the topic, Big Brother and regulations, is something that we all have to be aware of. Certainly the FAA in the US have had their journey, and certainly ours in Australia has been an interesting one as well. You mentioned that you think that in a lot of ways Australia has led the world. Let's start with a quick little video which is produced by CASA, explaining not what's about to happen but the current regulations that are in force. Let's watch the video.
Rules governing the commercial use of drones or remotely piloted aircraft, RPAs, have recently changed in Australia, enabling more people to get involved in this fast-paced industry. These new rules remove some of the red tape and create an excluded category of low-risk operations, allowing you to fly commercially without the need to be certified, providing your drone weighs less than 2 kilograms. But firstly, you have to obtain an Aviation Reference Number, or ARN, plus supply information about your intended operations. And this all can be easily done through the CASA website. And it's a good idea to etch your ARN number into your drone. While there's no formal training required, you do need to know how to fly your drone safely. So make sure you practice and develop your skills to a competent level before launching into the skies. Remember, you're remotely piloting an aircraft and sharing airspace with other aircraft, including low-flying helicopters and aeroplanes. So it's important you maintain good situational awareness, protecting both people and property. And where possible, have someone observing and keeping a good lookout. And if you do see another aircraft nearby, land immediately. To help make this happen, there's some standard operating procedures you must adhere to. Always keep your drone within your direct, unaided line of sight, flying only in daylight hours and not higher than 120 meters. You must keep your drone at least 5.5 kilometers away from controlled aerodromes and steer clear of all public safety and emergency situations like car crashes, firefighting efforts, police operations, and surf rescue patrols. Protecting the public on the ground means keeping your drone at least 30 meters away from other people and not flying over areas where, if your drone was to fail, it could hit someone. These populous areas include parks, beaches, and sporting fields. If you fail to adhere to these operating procedures, heavy fines can apply. And if you want to fly commercially beyond the standard operating conditions, you must be certified. Being certified is a great way to establish a career in the industry, with license holders afforded many additional benefits and exemptions unlicensed operators won't likely get. Details on gaining your remote pilot license, as well as more information and guidance material on operating in the excluded category, can be found at casa.gov.au/RPA. And remember, your drone is your responsibility.
So that's certainly the current regulatory position in Australia, and I think CASA, to their credit, have created a good, simple, easy to understand, easy to explain video about what we can and can't do as pilots in Australia.
I think it's a good idea, and I mean CASA, today recognises that a video is going to be the best medium to, someone who's bought their aircraft at Harvey Norman, taken it out of the box, and off they go. They're not necessarily going to go to links and start reading Part 101, which is our regulatory requirement. It's just too hard to read, and it's not simple in any sort of fashion. The regulations are written as regulations, so I think it's a great move. And CASA, to their credit, are quite firm with the distribution. I got our 3D Solo delivered from a company in Texas. It came via a couple of days ago via FedEx, and inside the box was a CASA leaflet. Absolutely. And so anything that comes into this country, I'm pretty sure now, I've seen them inside DJI aircraft shipped from Hong Kong. So the message is out there for the distributors as well. This is and it's put out by the MAAA and CASA. They've basically got this in the box. You have to have something in the box that alerts you to go and watch the video, know what the basic rules are, and it's a good thing.
So let's quickly talk the different categories. So you've got people who are with the MAAA or some other aeronautical club. They can do whatever is allowed under the conditions and the rules and the procedures of that club. So that's the first category.
That's right. And MAAA is the Model Aircraft Association of Australia. We have two now. We have the Australian Miniature Aerosports Association as well. They provide an insurance and a regulatory body for people to operate model aircraft. They prefer to separate themselves from our technology because they're fearful that the technology will limit what they're allowed to do. Obviously, a model aeroplane that's not automated is line of sight. That's it. You can't fly it further than you can see it, and once you do, you've lost it. So there is certainly a low risk in the airplane getting flown too far, which is a good thing as well. So the MAAA are pretty keen, and the model fraternity is very keen to distinguish an automated aircraft from a hands-on RC aircraft.
Yeah, indeed. You know, the whole separating yourselves. I went to a flying field, and I won't mention the name of it for that RC club, and I didn't have any of their equipment, but I certainly felt like the odd man out as soon as I mentioned that I had a DJI product.
Yeah, that's right. Well, a lot of the people that fly those airplanes have one in the closet. They're very handy for finding a lost aircraft. And they can fly them. You know, there's no doubt about that. But, you know, there's always going to be that type of fear. Basically what happened a long time ago, I believe someone in CASA who had an interest in model aircraft wrote or began to put together Part 101, which was the blanket unmanned aerial vehicle regulations. So unmanned aerial vehicles are fireworks, weather balloons, free flight aircraft, anything, and model aircraft, a section of that as well. So the interesting part about all of that is that under this blanket regulation of how unmanned aerial vehicles are going to work, we had drones come in 2002, and CASA looked at adding those particular things to Part 101 to cover those. It's had a couple of metamorphoses since then. 2012, they got quite worried about the technology and how fast it was moving. They decided to clamp down significantly on operators and people that wanted to operate these aircraft. There was a bit of an overstatement in terms of what they did in regulation. In 2016, they relaxed the regulations. So now we're at a stage where there's a Senate inquiry in progress where they're going to look at finding somewhere in the middle, which will be very interesting.
So let's just let me rewind just so that I can try and put it together, because certainly viewers from outside Australia won't understand our categories. So category one was the MAAA kind of stuff. The next group is people who don't have any license at all, so they can fly. What's their high level summary? What they can do?
Well, a recreational sub 2 kilo license now allows you to operate commercially with a aircraft, a UAV drone, without any license or training at all.
So I'll put them in a separate category. So the first one is pure recreational.
Yep.
And then you can also have another subcategory of that non-licensed, which is you can do commercial work with a sub 2 kilo aircraft.
You can. You've got to remain in the standard operating conditions, which is the same as the model aircraft people. You fly in daylight, you fly in visual line of sight, you don't only fly one aeroplane at a time. Good luck if you think you can do more. And that you fly in VMC. So this visual meteorological conditions. So they're pretty basic, not flying over people, of course, populous areas, within 30 metres of a person not involved in the operation. They're basic core safety things that the UAV industry uses anyway, even in commercial ops. We don't set up a launch area where there's people around. So we've got those we might be operating at night, but there are certain restrictions on operating at night and how you do it.
Yeah.
Moving on to your section 3, a commercial operator, or in the States that's called a Part 107 operator, is able to have those other licenses, operate at night, operate and apply for operating near an airport and so forth with the right paperwork.
Yeah, it's interesting. The big difference that I see between our license holders, to be able to actually get licensed is not trivial in Australia.
No, it's not. The license, like Part 107 license, have to be earned, and I think it's a fairly similar system in the States to here. You can get a pilot license if you like, a UAV pilot license, but you can't operate commercially without what we call an operator's certificate. If you liken it to an airline, if you're an American Airlines pilot, you have a commercial pilot's license. You don't have a license to go and grab a jet and fly in charter category, put passengers on board and charge them. The airline itself has to have a complete safety culture and structure, and the pilots work within that. And that's what we have for the UAV industry as well. So my company, where I'm the principal, or if you like, chief pilot, I have other pilots working for me, and they operate under what we call our operator certificate or operator's license. And it keeps everything nicely checked and balanced, if you like. It's an important process. Aviation wasn't put together yesterday. It's had a long history of very clever people looking at the ways to do it right and do it safely.
Yeah.
And that's what we have today in terms of aviation worldwide.
Yeah. So just to share before we move off the topic of the license holders, like in Australia, the actual cost to obtain a license is not as simple as taking a test. In Australia, you actually need to do a practical. You need to fly your equipment, your aircraft. You need to do that in front of an examiner, do a particular set of manoeuvres for them, and you can't actually get your license without that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, you can't actually do that test without also being part of a course. There's no one who is currently selling that as an unbundled exam without doing a course, and that's currently the order of a 3 to 5 day course, depending on what you pick. And that, yeah,
them around $4,000. Well, again, they to be a training provider or offer that course, if you like, you have to be have a training provider's operator certificate, if you like, under CASA as well, and that basically keeps it open. We had for a number of years a means where a manufacturer, and we were manufacturing at the time, we could offer other pilots, if you like, an endorsement on the aeroplane, which gave them a UAV operator's license as well. That's been changed now, so we're looking at, obviously getting people who are licensed, trained properly, and by a licensed school, and making sure that all those boxes are ticked. I think it's an important step. I think the Senate inquiry will find that the sub 2 kilo category's got some risks. Not having any training or any checks and balances. I sort of put forward the idea that we have an online course, that someone who bought a UAV did an online questionnaire. Even if they were going to fly it recreationally, they could sign up and do a questionnaire, pass the questionnaire and leave their name there and say, look, I'm going to operate this responsibly. People who are going to operate sub 2 kilo commercially should be checked basically and for their knowledge, making sure they know what the standard operating conditions are. It's to me, it's fairly simple. It's a no-brainer, but we'll see where the Senate inquiry goes with that. At the moment, it's a free-for-all.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, you think the current laws are too relaxed?
I think they are. I think they're a little too relaxed. I think we'll see problems from it, and I think as if not now, we're going to see more capable aeroplanes into the market every year. We're going to see them be able to fly greater distances, have much more, sensory ability. I think we really need now to have a framework in place, get people who are interested in them flying them, and then have the right, if you like, blocks in place for people who come into the industry with no aviation background, no knowledge of the airspace system at all, and bring them into it safely, and so they can enjoy it. I mean, the worst case scenario, have problems and they shut the whole thing down. No one wants that. We'd rather have the right solution than stifle the industry. We want it to move forward. There's going to be a lot of great jobs, a lot of great opportunities for these young people that are getting these aeroplanes. Let's start them off with the right way of doing things. Let's show them the rules, and let's give them the fact that we're trusting them and giving them a responsibility of operating in the national airspace system. It can be done. The rules are there. All you got to do is know them and abide by them, and everybody's happy.
Have you seen the DJI questions that they've got in the US that are now compulsory?
I haven't seen those, but I'm aware that they're moving back towards that way of doing things. And I did my Part 107 license in the States, and there it was quite simple. You do it all online. You had to actually study for it. It took me 4 or 5 hours checking the book. I knew a lot of the regulations anyway, so I had a bit of a head start. But I had to sit down and do the test online and hand it in, and then go and pick up my certificate. You go and pick it up in person so that you've got an ID check, and that's important. So when I went to Hawaii, I fronted up at the FAA office, and I hope that answers your question in terms of, yes, the questions, obviously DJI becoming involved in that is another subject. I don't think it should be up to the manufacturers. I think that's any type of restrictions and no-fly zones and those sort of things. When a manufacturer gets involved with a regulator, I see problems with that. I'd much rather the pilots and the regulator were a group, if you know what I mean, and whatever manufacturer was there, we were going to look at their technology, use it safely. That's just the way I feel about that, quite strongly.
Okay, John, I'm going to leave you on the screen just for a couple of moments because the camera that I'm actually trying to speak to you on has frozen. So nice. I'll leave you on the screen, but we'll continue.
Lucky audience. Lucky audience right away. Let me see, I've got some chats here as well. Infinite YouTube videos, don't really able to tell the difference. Here we go, I'm just reading a couple here. Angus, glad someone has their head around the CASA regs. Constantly shifting, quite a good point. They are, and I think they will. I think, Angus, in terms of the way regulations move, where CASA are struggling because we're moving with such a dynamic technology. I began my flying in 1975, pre-GPS, and I can remember the first GPSs, the idea that they were in sailboats, and I can remember ferry pilots talking about rigging them up and getting a fix, and crossing the Pacific you could hope to get up to 8 fixes to help you while you're across the Pacific.
So hi and welcome back. Just briefly, in case you're wondering, our camera isn't fixed. I'm actually adding this little piece in after the fact. We had a problem with the audio in the live stream today, so this little bit I thought I'd fix. Anyway, we're going to have a look at one more video, and the video today that we're looking at is something that happened with my aircraft after it came back from service from DJI. Now in this particular case, this was not the flight test, but it was something that happened after checking out all of the basic movements of forward, backwards, left and right, and so on, etc. But let's have a look at the video. So this scenery you can see at the moment is out the back of where I live. It's a river called the Georges River. And what you're seeing, whenever I left yaw, for some reason, the aircraft was flopping, or I call it a gimbal flop. So we've got a little counter there happening, and this was over the period of about 5 minutes. It was 2 unedited shots put together where this happened. There's number 3, number 4. Every time I left yaw, number 5, again and again, number 6, that was a big one. This happened. And then we saw gimbal roll reach movement limit. Now this was an error that came up on the DJI Go application, so I just thought I'd put that there in the video. Number 7, number 8, and number 9. Gimbal roll reach movement limit again came up. So this was a bunch of errors that we had, and I'll put John back on and I'll add the rest of the video in a little bit. But just to explain what it actually was, DJI came back later on and told me that it was a faulty gimbal motor. That was the root cause of the problem. But for this section, I just wanted to share with you all that this was an important thing to flight check your aircraft after you get it back from service.
Obviously, people do gimbal recalibrations and so forth. In follow mode, when the aircraft does a reasonably rapid yaw, you'll get a float, so the gimbal will actually float to the stop, and that can be, as you say, a hardware issue when it reaches the stop, if it does a flop. I know you probably had a full flop too. I've experienced those where the gimbals eventually just hit the gimbal limit unpowered and not rebooted in flight. So you had the camera, it's just sending the signal, but the gimbal motors don't reboot. So that can be a problem as well.
But anyway, long story short, it was an interesting experience for me, and it illustrates the importance of doing a flight test after any maintenance on your aircraft.
Correct.
Certainly that was, nothing severe or critical, but it did illustrate to me one thing. I fly, as you can see, as do you, over water. In hindsight, I should have done my flight test over land.
Yeah, that's true. You've got to be fairly confident operating over water. Having said that, in terms of the aircraft safety, there's a lot of good reasons for operating over water in terms of public safety. I can tell you that. It's usually quite a safe. You're not going to really hit or damage anyone, provided you're flying in an open water space. And often, when you live in the city, it's a very good place to find that open space. There's no kids playing on it when you're out over the water. It's not like a park. So I prefer the water myself, and I'm just super careful with my aeroplane.
Yeah, indeed. So at the moment, you can see a freeze frame of me, and unfortunately, the camera hasn't rebooted properly, and I won't be able to do that until after Wirecast, after this broadcast is over today.
Fabulous. I mean, you're still in the studio, and I'm remote, and I'm still the one that's online, which is quite ironic, really, but good. We can move on anyway, and complete what we were going to talk about for sure.
Yeah, look, we've only got one more thing left today, and that was one more chat session. So let's click that title button. So I'm going to be totally motionless there, but this is interesting. Discussion from the chat room. I've not dared to fly the Spark around any real congested urban areas. I live on the south coast of Sydney. My biggest threat so far has been local hawks. Hugh, certainly I live in the Sutherland Shire area myself. I don't have any hawks here, but I gather that'd be the Illawarra Hawks, maybe, if you lived down that way.
It might be. Might be the team. Not sure. You need to be careful with bird life. I've not had any significant problem with them. I had birds approach the aircraft. One of the things that you can remember about birds of prey, or birds that particularly are looking for prey, is that they are threatened by altitude. So a bird knows that it has an advantage when it has altitude. So if you see a bird approaching and you slowly descend, let the bird have a look at you, it may come a little closer and it's not threatened by you. Now you might argue that might be a good tactic. In fact, climbing quickly and showing the bird that you are the superior thing flying there will often send it the other way. It's safe to send the bird the other way. You don't actually want it playing with the aeroplane at all. So we've tried both, and I've found a quick vertical climb as a bird approaches will usually send it packing.
I've seen that.
Safest thing for bird and aircraft. So just think about that. If it's a really big bird of prey, one would suggest that you don't climb, but you come down as smartly as you can, because that will have different effect when it grabs you.
Yeah. Just seeing from Chris, he wants the P5 to come on.
Yeah, the P5's an interesting topic, and we you've been around these things long enough now. You watched the way DJI released things. I can remember when the Mavic came out, everybody said, well, that's it, the Phantom's dead. We finished with the Phantom 3. 3 is a nice round number. The Phantom 3 Pro, outstanding piece of aeroplane, which it was. I've got my feelings here about the Mavic Pro, and let's just see if your learned listeners share them. I don't believe the Mavic Pro is a DJI aircraft. I actually...
That's controversy.
I know it is controversy. I think that a company came up with the design, a finished design for a very good aeroplane, and DJI bought it outright. Now, we'll never be able to prove that. We can look at, DJI as an expanding company, of course, as Apple would, that have divisions, or perhaps other companies that have divisions of design teams that work on things. Maybe it was a different design team, but I've got a feeling it's so different to the other aircraft and where they were going. They decided to buy the Mavic Pro, put it on the market. Everyone liked it for lots of reasons. It was foldable, it was portable, and I think they tested the market with portability. That aircraft, the Phantom, to me, was always a portable aeroplane compared to what we'd been dragging around. Very portable, much lighter than Inspire. But I think that's been very successful. If you look at the Spark and the Mavic Air, the Mavic Air, this very latest release, is nothing like the Mavic Pro in any way, shape or form. It's foldable, but the design and the layout of the way the architecture is on the aeroplane is much more Spark-like than it is Mavic-like.
I think you're right, but I don't think it was necessarily a separate company. I think it was definitely a different development team within DJI, and I heard rumours, whether or not they're true or not, that certainly a large number of the people who are on the Phantom team, thanks Hugh, I just saw it's my good side.
Yeah, at least it didn't freeze on something, that wasn't... So
at least my mouth is not open.
You're almost smiling, yes, good.
Yeah, I heard a rumour that a lot of the Phantom software developers were let go of at a certain point. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Well, look, there is room to develop the Phantom one more time. There's a list of things. We wanted a 360-degree camera, like the Inspire, retractable landing gear. All of these things add weight to the aeroplane. So if they pushed it up another 400, 500 grams to add these extras, I don't know that the benefit is that significant. I think that that probably the Phantom X might be, the Phantom 5 may come out under the name Phantom X. Whether it's going to have, there'll be an RTK version of it. I think that DJI are appreciating that a lot of their prosumer products are being used professionally now, like under our first job. There are lots of professional videographers now using the P4P, the Phantom 4 Pro, because it's just got good results. It's in Australia, you can operate it commercially without any sort of license, and so it's just taken off as a very good platform for people to use. Most videographers aren't using the Mavic. You'll find more people that fly the Mavic enjoy the flying part. So although they may be interested in aerial photography, and the Mavic's very capable, the serious photographers are going for the 1-inch camera as a preference. So, but I mean, flying wise, all of the DJI stuff, as far as I can see, flies very nicely. And in sport mode, you've got a bit of fun if you like to fly it a little faster, and you can develop your skills on it. I think it ticks quite a few boxes, and once you dive out of that prosumer market, you're getting a whole lot more work. This is anything out of the DJI stuff where you're going into the heavier aeroplanes and different autopilots. We'll spend 4 hours on the ground working on these things for every hour in the air. That's what you're looking at. Yeah,
indeed. So it's been interesting. We haven't had a chance to talk about the new aircraft, the Mavic Air. It is an interesting aircraft. From what I gather, the camera certainly looks a lot better.
It is. Robustness. One of the things about the Mavic Pro is that the camera is very fragile. And one thing I've noticed about the Spark is that the camera is well shielded, having it recessed into the fuselage. So the Air has copied that idea. As I said, the the new Mavic Air is much more Spark-like than it is Mavic-like. It folds, doesn't fold the same way quite, and the props aren't foldable.
I love the idea of the landing gear retracting. That's very nice.
Yes, yeah, it is. There's some really good things in it, and it's only a 430 grams, I believe, so it's 130 grams heavier than a Spark, but a lot lighter. A good 300 grams lighter than a Mavic Pro, and that's significant too. Good range. I mean, we won't be looking at a Spark or a Mavic Air. I like the Mavic Pro in terms of what it is and what it does and how it's built. I think the Spark's got legs yet. I think the second version of the Spark, if they develop just a little bit more advanced camera, a little bit more range, and a little bit more endurance, well, you might say that might be the new Mavic Air. But I think the weight for me is the thing. To keeping that weight down to 300 grams makes it very usable.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we've got 3 minutes before the top of the hour, and just to share with those who are watching us today, there's another YouTuber, 400 AGL, who is someone who's been involved in Ken's channel as well and on the sidelines. He's doing a live stream at in 3 minutes now, and his topic is going to be on the Inspire. He's just picked one up himself, an Inspire. I don't know if it was an Inspire 1 or 2, but anyway, that'll be interesting to have a look at.
Inspire 1,
you heard it's an Inspire 1 he's got?
Oh, I was saying Inspire 1's been around for a long time, so I imagine it's a 2 if you just picked it up.
Not sure. But anyway, that's certainly something that people may want to have a look at, looking at what we're going to do in weeks to come. Certainly the DJI hacking scene is something that I've been involved in on the sidelines. I'm certainly part of the Slack group that people may have heard of or may be part of. It's interesting where you can get in and you can modify the DJI Go application. You can have some fun with that, etc. It's a lot of fun getting under the hood and certainly getting around some of the bad decisions that DJI has made, in my opinion, in how the application works. So if those of you want to get involved in modifying your aircraft or the software, I'll put a link to the Slack group certainly in the description for the video.
Yep, and just a little tip on the side. I can see here Infinity Altitude's talking about the Mavic 2 is on the horizon. I've heard that also. That's going to be very exciting to think that the Mavic 2 is going to come out. But those of you that are using the DJI Go 4 app, be wary of the latest iOS update. If you're using iOS, 11.2.5 is a no-go for DJI Go 4 at the moment. So don't upgrade your iPad, folks. Just wait until DJI find a patch. Otherwise, you won't be doing any flying. And that's only been released a couple of days ago, so be careful of that.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I don't want to take away any viewers from 400 AGL. I encourage those who are here to go ahead and watch his stream. We'll be hopefully back, technology permitting, same time next week, and hopefully I'm going to be a little bit more animated. Thanks for watching, everyone.